start. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we have a, like Dom was just saying, we have a slew of students that are in a lot of programs right now. So we have a lot of students that are interested in this and do watch the recording. So it's just great to have you all even on a Zoom platform where we're recording. They'll really love this.
So hi, everyone. I think we'll do an official welcome. Thank you all for being here. My name is Dawn Valadez. I'm the Director of Youth and Emerging Media Maker Programs at the Bay Area Video Coalition. And we have a number of different programs in our organization. We're a 45-year-old video arts organization based in San Francisco. And we have programs that look at archiving video footage, training adults in how to make media. We have the SF Commons, which is our cable access program. And we have artistic development, primarily focusing on documentary filmmakers doing feature-length documentaries. And then our youth programs, and our youth programs have a variety of programs. We do workforce development that are semester-long programs where young people in our next gen programs learn how to do game code, animation, audio recording, video production. And then we have a program for transitional age young people, 18 to 24. Actually, we can take some people younger than that who go through the process of developing a documentary film, or actually they do fiction too, so fiction or documentary film. And then we recently have partnered with Real Stories, and I'll let Alexandria introduce herself and tell you a little bit about that program.
Hi, everyone who's watching. My name is Alexandria. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the program manager here at Real Stories. And we bring entry-level filmmaking education programs to our middle and high school female and non-binary youth filmmakers, and really look at ourselves as an access point into learning how to start on your filmmaking journey and how to cultivate your voice as a storyteller. And we are based in the East Bay, and we've been serving East Bay students for almost 10 years, but in the last almost year and a half, we've been able to serve a more national audience of middle and high school youth, female and non-binary filmmakers by offering a lot of our courses online. And the courses we've offered is intro to directing and script writing, and also just varying levels of filmmaking cohorts where our students come together for anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks to create a film. And we also have summer camps going right now. So if you are a middle or high school female and non-binary youth filmmaker, you can check out our programs at realstories.com. And we have some camps coming up in June and July. So I'm going to hand it off to the next person on the staff.
I'll keep going then. Thank you. Thanks, Alexandria. So one of the reasons why we're super excited to have the crew from Animal Kingdom on is that one of our programs, one of our youth programs, is called the Serial Storytellers. And this is an annual program that runs during this late spring. So right now we have a cohort of about 24 people who are half are writing a scripted series and the other half are creating a docu-series. And so we know all of them would be very interested and excited to hear from your crew in various departments of the production of Animal Kingdom. So we're super excited to have you. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to introduce Robert Scott, who was the person who came to me and we had this great conversation about the value of our participants getting to learn from people in the industry and people who've been working and doing this work together. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for making the time to do this. And thanks for allowing us to record this so we can share this with our participants.
And thank you so much for allowing us to participate. We're all very excited to be working with the group that you guys are a part of. I think that your work is fantastic. I got my own start in public access, so I'm super supportive of this this idea. I was also got my foot in the door in the industry via the Directors Guild training program many years ago, and was blessed to have had that leap forward in my career coming from Hawaii. And not knowing anybody, that program pushed me years forward in my career. I will be handing over some information to Dawn regarding several internship programs and training programs offered in the motion picture industry for those who might be interested. Today, our first presentation will be with the Animal Kingdom Art Department, as headed by production designer Nina Ruscio, who I will turn over the presentation to now.
I feel very fortunate that we actually have what I consider one of the best art departments in the industry, and we were able to have on this Zoom call almost all of the heads of the department of Animal Kingdom's art department right now. So I am a production designer. I've been an art director and a production designer for decades, and I love every minute of my job. Some minutes I adore more than others, but mostly I think that I have the best job on the planet, and I get to work with some of the wonderful people that I'm about to introduce so that you know who they are as well. But I think what we'll do is I'll introduce everybody, and then we'll go backwards and sort of tell you all what we might do during a day, or sort of what our job functions and titles are. As I'm admitting Joanne. Hi, Joanne. As a production designer, I'm essentially responsible for everything that's visual on a film, and I am nothing without all the people that make it happen around me. And on this call are two art directors, Lindsay Moran and Brett McKenzie, who I'm looking for now to see. And perhaps I'll go through everybody first. So Lindsay and Brett are our art directors on Animal Kingdom. They have careers of their own that are from the level of production designer through to art direction as we do now. And we're just very fortunate to have everybody woven together right now. I've got on this call also Matt Callahan, a set decorator and colleague that I've worked with for decades, and have had the fortune of his incredible talents on many projects, both feature films and television. We've had the opportunity to work for almost the last decade with John Wells, who's an executive producer who runs John Wells Productions, and somehow through the luck of time hard work, we've been a part of that family for over a decade now, doing shows like Shameless and Animal Kingdom. We also have Tom Zamora, who is the art department coordinator. Without Tom, pretty much these screens would be blank and nothing would ever happen. There's nothing more valuable than the most capable and intelligent and unimpeachable art department coordinator. That job title is a title of that can never really truly be explained, but if you can imagine anything that has to happen in an art department being coordinated, essentially that's Tom's job. Emma Weston, again, I don't see my crew, but I know they're there. So Emma Weston is, in a way, as Robert had mentioned, one of the newer members of this group. She is our art department PA. It is an entry-level position, but we have had the fortune of Emma being with us for so many years now that it feels as if she is just part of the fabric. I consider everyone an equal colleague, and I consider them all co-conspirators in many of the decisions that we make every minute of the day. So no matter what level you are, sort of classically, hierarchically in the art department, I consider everyone's opinions essential and valuable. And so Emma is glorious. She does research and all those things. So I think it actually might be valuable to start this, to sort of go backwards through that list and have people, if you're cool with it, you guys, just sort of explain a little bit about your job category and what you do. So Emma, to put you on the spot, if you could start.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm the art department PA. I've been with Nina and these guys for about 2 years now, I think. Back and forth doing Animal Kingdom and Shameless. my job kind of changes all day, every day, which I love. Like it can go between like researching to finding like samples and supplies to taking photographs of the set and helping with installs. Like it's a broad range.
And then Tom, again, I don't see you, but Tom.
Okay, sorry. Hi, I'm Tom. I'm the art department coordinator. I've been working with Nina for about 6 years, which has flown by. The art department coordinator's job is also pretty variable, like PA's job. I take care of a lot of the administrative duties for the office and handle ordering and some budgeting, as well as legal clearances and a lot of organizational duties.
And then let's see, Brett and Lindsay, B first. Brett.
Hi, I'm Brett McKenzie. I'm the art director on Animal Kingdom. Basically, an art director's job is taking Nina's design elements and working with our set designers to produce working drawings for built sets, and then working with construction to make sure that those sets are getting built accordingly and that the materials that she wants are getting ordered through Tom and through construction to make sure the sets stay on time and meet the dates that we need to for shooting.
Yeah, same. Lindsay Moran, I'm also art directing. We kind of traded in an assistant art director position for 2 art directors on this job, which was very helpful because in fact, we've started to leapfrog each other on episodes, which is kind of helpful. Our assistant directors do that. And it means that while one of us is loading in sets, being on location while installations are happening and opening sets when directors are there for the first time, then the other person can be out director scouting with Nina for the next episode, because there's always about 100 different places that we need to be every day. And I remember back when I was the only art director for some of these jobs, these episodic jobs, I was constantly saying to myself, I wish I had a clone. And now I do. It's great.
Thank you, Robert. And
shall I go now?
yeah, that seems great, Matt.
I'm Matt Callahan. I am the head of the set decorating department. So I'm the set decorator. And I've worked with Nina since dinosaurs roamed the earth, I think. And I am the guy who's in charge of all the stuff that goes on a set that fulfills the vision of whatever that set's supposed to be, whether it's trash cans in an alley or all the dressing in an office, lights and desks and all that kind of stuff. The set decorator is responsible for all of those individual details that are brought into a set and are not directly part of the structure of a set.
And I'm the production designer who ultimately I am in service of both the producers and the directors and the script. And the vision of those things need to go from the page through the sieve of how much money we have to the vision of ultimately in television. The vision is really more connected to the global ideas of the look of the show than it is specific to a specific director. It's unique in television. I think that television is a producer's medium in that way, in terms of sort of who's responsible for the overall continuation of the look. In television, a director comes episode by episode. So we as an art department are super responsible to sort of maintain the vision of the look of a show and keep things on track, because as directors come and go per episode, they're not necessarily connected to information that came before them or visual information that would need to come after them. So my job is to create the look of a show, make sure it's in alignment with the producer's visions and the director's visions. And I consider my job both macro in terms of overseeing the selection of locations, and micro, down to being as ridiculously specific as what font is on a piece of paper. I can get that macro, and I actually enjoy sort of toggling back and forth between the macro and the micro. I think others might go wild with it, but I actually really like it. And but again, to be more clear, my job as production designer is to oversee all these wonderful people, and all these wonderful people have a whole bunch of wonderful people that work with them as well. So we represent the sort of heads of the department, and we can't do anything without the staff that we have working with us. I think that maybe it would be a good idea. This might be the time to share some imagery of some of the things that we've done and things that we do, so that it would be, people can kind of get a sense of what questions they might want to ask about those things. And I'll start with that, I think.
Well, wait, before you go to that, can I ask a quick question? Can you tell us like how many people roughly there are in, that you're working with, like overall in the, and this is our art direction department, right? Overarching. Yeah, how many people overall?
Yeah, well, jobs vary, and so they expand and contract according to the need. On some jobs, you would have a lot more representatives of each individual sort of strata of the departments. So on some jobs, you can have as many as 8 art directors. Most jobs would have in the range of 2 or 1. And an assistant art director. So it does expand and contract to the size of the job. Then in terms of set designers, the set designers that you don't see represented in this panel, but there are set designers. And again, if we're building a lot of scenery, we need more than just one. So we might, that again can expand and contract either on a week by week basis or on a project by project basis. And that can range from anywhere from 1 to, I've probably never really managed more than 4 at a time on a particular project, but people do way larger projects where you can have a lot more set designers than that. At a certain point, too many people get too unwieldy and you can't really manage them. So you need more people to manage the people that are doing things. So then there's illustrators and storyboard artists and those kind of people that fit within the category of an art department. And then there's coordinators and PAs. And if you're working in different cities, you would have people of those categories in all those different cities and countries. You also then have, we are people that communicate with a construction and a paint department. And there is a lead, there's a construction coordinator, and that construction coordinator has construction foremen and crew members that are their right-hand people. Then there is a lead scenic who has a bunch of painters that work below them, again, expanding and contracting to the size of what needs to be accomplished. So on an average basis, you wouldn't really run those departments without less than maybe 10 people, I would say. Is that about right, you guys? Like 10, there would be 10, there would be painters and carpenters and laborers. That would be sort of minimal. A coordinator, a foreman, a lead scenic, and then their staff, that would be small. And then it can grow to 200 or more. It just depends again. But in every scenario, you classically have the department heads. And in some scenarios, if projects are as small as the department head has to paint everything, then that's what you got. And then we are working kind of in the mid-range. Television is sort of in a mid-range of that, or this level of television anyway. And then in terms of, there's a prop department, which is also under the auspices of the art department. They have classically, there are about 4 people that are consistent in staff. Robert, wouldn't you say there are about 4 prop people classically, ahead of a department, and then the people that are out running to get things, and the people that are on set to do the things. So no less than 4 usually. And we work alongside of the effects department. We're not, as an art department, you're not really in control of the special effects department. You work aligned with them, and you also work aligned with the visual effects department, which is a whole other world. We as an art department communicate with all of those departments. And then in terms of set decoration, Matt, you could speak to the quantities of that more than anybody.
Well, on this TV show and generally the TV shows that we've been doing, I generally have a lead man who's the guy who works directly with me and under me in terms of coordinating the logistics of the department, the trucks and the set dressers and all that kind of stuff. We maybe have 10 to 15 set dressers in general, and I have a couple buyers who are incredibly talented people that go out and find all the things that we need. And that's pretty much my department. Oh, and I have a coordinator too, a very wonderful coordinator. So that's it.
Yes.
Thank you.
So maybe now some pictures. Let's see here. We also work on a show, and I'm not sure if people can respond to this, but we also work on a show called Shameless. So I'm going to start with some pictures of Shameless, I think.
Shameless is amazing, so I'm very excited to see this.
I know. I love that. I like both of these shows.
Talk amongst yourselves while I get ourselves set up. Huh, interesting. Tell me if you see my screen.
Yeah, it looks great.
Oh, yeah, I recognize that.
Yeah, so this is an apartment from Shameless called, it's Fiona's apartment building. Fiona is Emmy Rossum, who just had a baby, by the way. She sent me a picture. It's a beautiful baby. But here's a set that I'm going to flip through a lot of sets so that people maybe, if they want to kind of corral their questions at the end, but this is a set that's a set that's supposed to be the interior. The exterior was a location in Chicago that we used, and the interior was a set that we built on Warner Brothers stage. You can sort of see we take great pride in the texture and details, and you can see sort of the painted treatment, even just this is all brand new carpet and brand new structures, but we made it look as if it had been there for 60 or so years. Here's an amazing, within this apartment structure, there were 3 or 4 individual interior apartments that changed over the course of a season into multiple different characters' sets. So here's an example of a hoarder's apartment that Matt had decorated that you can just sort of see the level of texture and the care and the detail, and no choice is done randomly. Every choice is specific. Maddie, if you want to chime in, I'm just going to paw through some pictures here, but you can see that essentially every choice is based off of some aspect of the character. And one of the amazing things about Mr. Callahan is his ability to chameleon from character to character. It gets in the mind of the character and really dips straight deep into, they died, you can tell. But I think, was Emma on this where we had to do research of dead bodies? I can't remember now. It was sort of.
No, but I've done dead body research for Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, exactly. So the things that you learn, that's one of the other wonders of being in an art department. You actually learn everything about something that you didn't know you didn't know that you needed to know.
So our Google search history is ruined.
Yes. Tell me if you're seeing actually my full screen, you guys. What do you see right now?
Yeah, it looks great. I see your full screen. I see the, it looks like a rendering of the Shameless. Is
Right.
that?
It's the plan for Patsy's.
Patsy?
Great, good. So it's the ground plan for Patsy's Pies. This is a set, frequently when you do jobs at Warner Brothers, you have the opportunity to work on the back lot. So in this situation, I took a structure on the back lot and rebuilt it and rebuilt the interior to serve for the purposes of a diner called Patsy's Pies. For fans of the show, it was a really important location that ended up being here's some previses that Kyle Gukin had done of the interior of this set. And these are drawings that are done with a program called SketchUp, which is super useful. And here's some pictures of the actual location, the actual set that we built and dressed the interior of. You can see all this lovely work by Mr. Callahan in here. We take great pride in everything from the gum stains on the linoleum to the consistency of the layers
on the table.
This from the mustard on the table to the fabricated stone work to the big fork and knife. So we take a lot of pride in detail.
Yes, I've taken a lot of pride in that big fork and knife over the years. Whatever happened to that big fork?
Were those real gumballs in the gumball machine?
Yes, but you wouldn't want to eat them. They've been there for 10 years.
Yeah, but for years, well, off and on for 10 years, because we have to dress. But for years, there used to be good and plenty in one of these, and I would put a quarter in and try to get, or nickel or whatever it was, and I would try to eat them, and everyone would just go, ew.
That's why we had to take them out and put the gumballs in there.
In COVID time, we actually turned Patsy's closed for COVID, and we ended up doing a mural on the exterior of Patsy's Pies. I have a colleague called Rudy Kale. He lives in Florida now, who I work with to design murals, and we had the benefit of a few of them on Shameless this season, littering the world with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor murals to stay accurate to the time, because in Shameless, we actually told the story of COVID. Animal Kingdom, we don't, but you can sort of see the transformation of the exterior facade. Now it's a closed location that closed the casualty of COVID and painted over with a mural. So that's some of Patsy's. And again, it's sort of the full range. We do everything from taking a plain old white room. This is a plain old white room, couldn't be plainer, and turning it into a dressing suite for, you remember this, Maddie? This was year 5.
Yeah, that was a high-end department store or something like that.
Yeah, it was a high-end department store changing room, so that they brought clothes out. They brought clothes, the models came out with clothes, and we created, so this is literally, it couldn't be a plainer white room. And we do these big grand sets, and then we also can take and transform a plain old white room into something that served the story. This is a loft that we had built as well. These are all full constructed sets. This loft became 4 or 5 different sets over the course of a season. It transformed into many different spaces. And again, you kind of feel the look. Oh, this is another one of those. In television world, I actually take great pride in reusing and recycling structures. So this was one of those that we ended up recycling. It was the set called for the Milkovich family. For the fans of Shameless, they would know who Mickey Milkovich is and his dad and his family. And so we were constantly repurposing this structure for different. We ended up calling it the Milkoplex because it became so many different things. Again, another plain room, add some paneling, and this was a Native American Indian tribal council for a casino. Mark my life, Linz. That's some Shameless. And how about the Gallagher house? I'm sure I'll go through some permanents. Tell me you're seeing my screen and you're seeing some of the Gallagher house now. Great. So,
Yeah, we're seeing it. Great.
Okay. So this is all of a look. Like generally you might have a similar feeling from all of these, in that they are very lived in the economic poor neighborhoods of the south and west sides of Chicago. We shot a lot of exteriors, both in Los Angeles. We shot 90% of the exteriors in Los Angeles, but 10% of the exteriors were in Chicago itself until this very last season when we couldn't go back there. But this is a beloved house. This is where the Gallaghers live, the second floor and the first floor of the Gallagher house. This is Kevin and Veronica's sets for Shameless. This is Shanola and Steve Howie. These are some permanent sets. And oh, here, this is cool. So when we were in because of COVID, we weren't able to go back to Chicago. And we had to solve our very specific problem that for 10 seasons, we had gone back twice a year to this street called Holman Street in Chicago that had the Gallagher exterior facade on it and the Gallagher exterior house. So what we did for season 11, because we couldn't go back, was we took an executive producer's parking lot on the Warner Brothers main lot because the executive producers were no longer coming to the main lot anymore. And we used their parking lot for a place to build the exterior facades of the Gallagher house and the house next door. And we were able to build just the facade of them. And then a VFX company, you can see that we built the concrete, the grass, the concrete sidewalks, the fencing, the facades, and the entryways into these two structures. And then the visual effects company was able to create an asset and build the rest of the world as a computer generated model that they would incorporate into all of the photography that we did there. And we would do these these small pieces for maybe one-offs that we weren't using for multiple episodes. This was the front porch of Kevin and Veronica's house. And it became a kind of very successful solution to how do we deal with the truth of the matter, which is we couldn't go back to Chicago, which was completely depressing, honestly. Let's see here. Here are some images. There's a great video, and I don't know that it's fair to go into that too much right now, but there's a great video that Matt sent me where you sort of see what they put in to what we gave them. So this is what we gave them, and this is what they did with the visual asset. These are very cloudy because these were sent to me by David O before that kind of YouTube video that they made. But you can see this is what we gave them: the sidewalk, the street, the lawn, the car, and this is what they were able to plop into the background. You see sort of the world. We were able to give them quite a lot, so there was a lot of photography that did not require visual effects. But sometimes we didn't give them anything, and they were able to give us the world. So that's a little taste of what we were able to do in season 11 on Shameless, which was pretty magical and ultimately, I think, very successful. A lot of people don't know that we didn't go back to Chicago. But that gives you a little sense of the interface between the visual effects world and the practical construction. Any space in these moments, the best way to save money is any space or any zone where an actor's body is interacting with the background. It's best to give imagery behind that is practical. These people here cost more to give them a background to than these people here, because this stuff in the background doesn't move. That's a little bit Shameless. How about some Animal Kingdom? Animal Kingdom, I'm going to show you a little movie from Animal Kingdom, because Animal Kingdom, if you've seen it, is a story of a crime family drama, and a lot of the story it's very important because it's a family that when we began thinking about how to proceed, how to actually produce this show, which was Southern California based and about a family, and they live in this house. And we really realized that the indoor-outdoor experience of being in a California house was going to necessitate not a normal solution. A normal solution would have been to build to build a set on stage and have an exterior as a practical location. But what we chose to do on Animal Kingdom was to build both the exterior and the interior of the house as a fully workable stage world that essentially we built a complete practical interior and exterior on the back lot. So with your, hopefully my folks will tell me if I'm doing anything that doesn't work. Hold on. Does that look about right, you guys?
Yeah, looks great. Thank you.
Okay, so hold on. So that's a unique solution to a design challenge, which is how to deal with a story of a house that is an important character, because there's so much interaction in the house between the characters and no privacy. How to solve that was that I feel really proud of, because that was accomplished in 10.5 weeks, and it has served the story and the show now for 6 full seasons, this interior and exterior. So it will be bittersweet when the work in this house comes to an end. But along the way of these last 3 seasons, and I'm going to give away something. I'm going to give away something that I'll
Are
probably
you really?
but whatever, it's okay, Robert, can I? So I won't tell you anything specific, but I will tell you that, and you have seen a season in which we traveled to different time periods. Is okay, Robert?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Maybe not.
I mean,
So
yeah, just tread lightly, as you know, we've
tread lightly.
touched on the
So,
one
yeah,
time period that's been aired.
yeah. So maybe we're not going to show those pictures. I can hear from your voice, so we won't show those pictures.
Can,
But
can I just ask you a quick question? I mean, that looks phenomenal to me. I actually, that's like such a rare thing to do in either a film or in television. What were the conditions that made, I mean, I hear you saying about the house has its own personality, and obviously it's a ranch style house that has these sort of, I mean, it's very typical SoCal beach house in many ways, like that ranch house. I grew up in LA, I grew up in Hollywood, and I grew up with a lot of houses like that in Manhattan Beach and whatnot. So I'm just curious, like, is it functional also, or it's really just for the sets? Like there's no running water, there's no regular electricity,
there
there's
is
no,
not.
yeah, tell us a little bit about that and the decision to make that, to do that. Instead of just
when we were in pre-production, kind of we did a feasibility study about how to handle the truth of the matter, which was that a lot of the story would take place at the house, and that we would end up needing a 5-bedroom house with a backyard, with a pool. And we would need to be able to film in it in a way that its natural design is intended, which is with maximum transparency from the inside to the outside, from room to room, because there's no privacy, there's no secrets in this world. I'm actually going to ask if someone can snag some pictures of because the only pictures I have are sort of multiple time periods. So I'm wondering if there's any, a couple, perhaps like a director's packet of the pictures of the house. If someone could snag that while I'm chatting away, that would be great. So what was decided was, if we were going to build a house, and if we were going to continue the assumption that the whole point of the house was to be able to have no privacy, then we also had to hide the fact that it was a set. So every choice that we made was made so that we hid that fact. We made it, I've got electrical running through places we've never even used. I've got electrical running through the ridge beam. You can plug in CAN ports to two sides of that house, full on. There is full on running water, full on heating, full on air conditioning, full on plumbing, full on sprinkler system, everything. There's a driveway with an active gate. There's a garage that opens up. There's a 9 foot deep pool that's fully functioned. There's a backyard, a front yard, and 5 different bedrooms and windows and doors and refrigerators and stoves and sinks. And it was really a decision because essentially the design tenet was no privacy. And so everything needed to be exposed. And the whole point was to be able to shoot anything at any one time. So if we had to hide an effects guy or hide something there, it would completely defeat the intent of the house. And that was how the decision was born. And it was really difficult to make happen in the time frame that we were allowed to make it happen. But it's ultimately served the production really well. It's already a big photography challenge to deal with the indoor and the outdoor as you would in a practical location. So to add any other elements of difficulty to the photography of that, because we have to treat it, it rains and it shines, and it is hot as hell, and it's morning and it's night in that house, just like it is in any other practical locations. So you lose some of the advantage of being on a stage, but you gain the realism of being in the real world and being able to seamlessly go from the inside to the outside. So that's how come that decision was born.
Right, as Nina alludes to, when we build a set on stage, as we normally would, as she said, you can shoot day scenes at night, you can shoot night scenes during the day, and you have control over your environment. And by creating this practical location, as Nina and her team did, it provides this tremendous realism to the filming. But as you say, it's a tremendous accommodation of the elements, and we shoot day for day and rarely and normally night for night, which then has the crew filming till midnight and later, sometimes on a Friday night. These are some of the accommodations that the photographic part of our crew makes for the practical set. Nina, what sort of accommodations do you as a designer make for camera, make for lighting, make for production? All of these sets that you've shown us have tremendous realism, but they are there to tell a story in a photographic sense. So what sort of things do you do to accommodate that?
I'll put up some pictures right now of a kind of more classic set, and I'll show you the reasons why certain choices were made. So I think that might be a good groundbreaking way of describing it. So let's see here. You should be seeing the ground plan of a prison set. Does that look like what you're seeing? And this set is a little more classic in its intent and in its design. This was a set that is a set fully on stage, a set that had to have fully controlled lighting. I'll circle back to the Cody House in terms of choices that were made there, but I want to kind of use this as a tool to explain the question that you'd asked. So here's a design of a set that's on stage, and there's never enough room on any stage. You can be on the biggest budget show and just never enough room. In this situation, we had to shove a set into the stage in the leftover space of the stage, but also be able to light it and be able to get photographic angles, and also to be able to light it, which is a constant important design armature upon which to base decisions. So in the decisions that we were making for this particular design, we decided that we wouldn't go for view out windows at the eye line of people's heads where they would be sitting or where they were standing, but we would go for high windows, which would be able to allow a kind of dramatic style of lighting. And then we would go for skylights, which would be able to allow us to be able to light the set in such a way so that we didn't have to also behind the lights have a view. So if you have a window, you need to have a view, and if you have to if you have a view, then you have to have a way to light it. And so we didn't have that much space. So my space considerations here were to create the kind of illusion of depth by creating a glass hallway that was an interior hallway with windows that you couldn't really see through, but that had enough texture to them so that they were interesting. So that even within this small space, within this 3.5 foot space that's here, you can have actors walking here, and you create a level of depth to a room that that gives you the capacity to light from the skylights and from the clear story lights, but also a kind of complexity and depth within a small space. So that's a design choice that I make. That's partially an answer to your question, Robert. But I work with the cinematographer to clarify how they intend to photograph the room. But what I've ended up in the last kind of chunk of years, I've ended up building sets that have to serve for purposes that are not yet written. And so I have to think ahead from a cinematographer's perspective about what's the, there's Dwayne, my construction coordinator, which I cannot accept right now. I have to think about the most fluid and flexible and cinematic, the most cinematic options that a set can offer. I have to sort of think in advance. It's not the normal way, like in a movie or something like that, where you know, okay, you're building this set, it's for these pages, these script pages, you know exactly what's happening in these pages, and you know what scenes are taking place. And so you can think it all through, and you can storyboard it all out, and you can think it all in advance. But in a television world, you sometimes have to accommodate the unknown. And so when we built this set, we made certain speculative assumptions that we would need a day room, that we would need a visitation room, that we would need the physical feeling of depth, and ways to light it and different angles to shoot it in. And you can see from this original plan that there's enough hallway so you could turn hallway scenes. So you just sort of have to guess, and that's not normal. In the Cody compound, what we did was we created portals we model it certainly so that you can see it well in advance to sort of figure out what the lighting conditions. In that situation, we had to, like an architect, I had to actually kind of orient the set so that the light served it on the site. The best lighting would be served. So we rotated it to the exact degree, and we did daylight studies and night studies on the space to be able to make sure that would work. And then there were certain givens, certain things that I couldn't bulldoze, and certain burns that I had to utilize. But I almost forget all the things that I think about to accommodate camera now, because it's not part of my job. Ultimately, if I don't design something that can be shot or lit, like Matt notoriously puts marvelous lighting fixtures and everything. If you don't design it to be shot, it's in nobody's interest. It needs to be something that can be seen on film, and it's designed for cinematic movements and for different camera lenses and for different camera angles. Is that a wishy-washy way of answering, or is that like a good way of answering that question?
No, it's fabulous. And I think that the style of the shows that we've just been discussing are very much based in a very realistic approach to storytelling. I've worked with other folks who don't necessarily design for to be shot. And I've seen the disaster of the director of photography struggling to A, light it within some sort of electrical budget, and B, shoot it in the time frame allowed. And because of the set, have been tremendously frustrated by that. Perhaps in another time, things we would wild walls. We would build walls that would look real, and then a minute later, the grips would have that wall removed, and you would be putting your camera there, and such. And there's ceiling pieces that pop out, and certain pieces of wall that might become camera portals, etc. So that some of those elements can be taken into the account of during the design, but because of the shows that we're working for, and the realism that we shoot them, the realistic style that we shoot, we don't need those elements.
And also in two of the shows, like there are camera portals and there's wild walls, and sometimes in very, kind of in original movies and things like that are a big part of my past, the wild wall considerations were huge, and they were really important, and they were understood in advance with the cinematographer and such. At the speed at which we shoot, and in the style in which these two particular shows, which actually are both John Wells shows, I remember on Shameless, because a lot of Shameless sets are really small, and there was this whole conversation in the very beginning, should we wild the walls? And two things happen. Pretty much, there's not enough time, and the style of the show, you wanted to be in the room with them. And so it wasn't in service of the style of the show to have this voyeuristic perspective outside of the room. And so each show stylistically would have a cinematic style that would lend itself towards being outside of the room. So you would have a wild wall position, or being inside of the room. And so it's kind of show to show. Here's a show that's not realism based. Here, I'll show you this one. This is a good looking show that was a pilot for a show that we just did that didn't happen. But this show it was made for an entirely different cinematic style. So this was a very large build that was designed for a lot of Steadicam photography and moving from room to room, and then some very, very large tableaus. So this was a set that was fully linked. It was a wall-to-wall set on stage, but the cinematic style was really, really different than Shameless and Animal Kingdom, because these, for instance, these were a lot of secretive, you thought it was a wall, and it was a passage. And so built in throughout this set were all of these natural camera portals that cinematographically were really important to the story, because in this set, everyone was being watched at all times. And so that voyeuristic feeling of being outside of a wall was way more relevant for this one.
Can you tell us which are where the camera portals are, or an example?
Well, like for instance, here's a for instance. Remember, when I was talking about the camera portals, and I was talking about those walls that were there with the peacocks. These are those walls that are actually a panel wall system that open up as a door. So this door can open up, and that wall that can close off and look like a wall. And then all of a sudden now you have a camera portal. This is not what would be considered a kind of common camera portal, but here it is. It's a perspective from above that's a camera position. So there's camera portals that are usually outside of the set, or a hole that you cut in a wall, or a piece of a wall that you remove to get a camera behind it. But then there's also just the language of cinema that you want to have camera positions. And in television, you're usually designing sets that can have an infinite number of cinematic possibilities. And that's really important to storytelling, because especially when you don't know every story that's going to be told, you want to kind of create the opportunity for any cinematic way for a story to be told. A show like this that could have lasted for 10 months or a year and multiple episodes, you can't know all the things all the stories that you need to tell there. So it's really important to be able to give cinematic possibilities that are refreshing and new for every episode, especially in a show like this where we were going to spend almost every episode inside of this house.
This is gorgeous. I mean, really, all of these examples are so interesting and so radically different.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is just gorgeous. Can you tell us what show that was?
It was a pilot for a television show called Redbird Lane that is not, will not be coming soon to a theater near you, but it did give a lot of people work during the pandemic, as we were in the middle of building it before the pandemic, and we were one of the first 2 shows that were brought back to Warner Brothers to be able to complete the build after the pandemic. So though you won't see it on film, it would have been a beautiful looking show. But again, our job is really very ephemeral. Ultimately, we build things and we tear them down. And they're for the service of a particular script and a particular story. And in the end, they exist on celluloid or tape or whatever they exist on now, or in somebody's portfolio in a couple of pictures. But really, everything about our life is like being gypsies and nomads. We really don't ultimately have any visual home. They're always going to be a different way of telling a visual story, a different group of people, a different aesthetic. It's actually one of the things that's really kind of unexpectedly important to realize in the film industry, that you are a vessel. Like if you're a designer and you've got a brand name or something like that, this is not really the right profession for you, because in fact, actually, you want to recede in the background of the storytelling. You want to make it so the environment so necessary that nobody thinks twice about it. I have one more video that I do want to show, which I think is useful just for the structure of the way things get done. It's kind of a goofy little, to a maybe annoying song, Love Shack, which I'll show you, which I think would be good to share, just sort of showing you the different departments and how things happen. And in our job, these things happen on a daily basis. How about this? As you see what's happening here, you'll notice that that there'll be a wave of one department, a wave of the construction department coming in, and then a wave of the paint department, and then a wave of crew members of the set deck department. And one of our PAs at one point made this movie of an installation that we did at the beach, and we had to build all these elements back at the shop and paint them and change them and make them all perfect and set them up, construct them in a modular way so that they could be built at the beach in a very short period of time. And we do this kind of thing on a daily basis, make something out of nothing in a half a day or 2 days. So this is a little movie to tell that story. what I like about that is just sort of seeing, like, when an actor comes to on a set and they said, "Oh, was this here?" And no, like, nobody has any idea really. All of the departments that was going, that's set deck, that's the electricians, that's the grips, that's construction, that's paint department, that's, lots of thought ahead of time, organizing how we get something done, how can we make this happen in one day in this installation, and just that this happens on every day. We do 3 or 4 of those, like literally every day of our life in an art department is trying to think way ahead of time about how we can make that kind of thing happen on a daily basis. So, and how many people it really takes, and how much planning and foresight and forethought happens with everything.
What was
Stella?
the time? What was the time period that that video covered?
That was a day,
One day.
right? That was a 1-day installation. Matt, do you remember? At max, it was 2. I'm pretty sure it was 1 or 2 at the max.
And then it was probably pulled out in half the time that it took to build.
Oh
put
yeah,
together.
everything comes down really fast. So, because locations are expensive to use. And so you rent a location for 1 day of prep or 2 days of prep. You can't be out on the beach for days on end, and you have to think about it ahead of time. So we had to build everything in a modular way so that we could be constructed and deconstructed and put together on the beach, and everything sort of has to be thought about. Contingency plans are always made, but everything has to be thought about in advance. There's no random choice. And in that story, we were supposed to create the look. I think Frank was shacking up with a woman, and he was going on a little dream trip to Costa Rica. But whether it's today or tomorrow, we're creating a hospital. The next day, we're creating a prepper compound. I have many other pictures to show. I'm not sure what people's bandwidth are for, but I don't want to, I'm not sure, but I think that like, for instance, Matt, we consulted about what you would have in the inside of that, and you would look at the ground plans and the elevations and figure out down to the kind of oilcloth. I remember we talked about that oilcloth, that for that look of how the light would transmit through that, for the window coverings. And again, I'm struck when I look at these, there's so many thousands of decisions that go into it, into everything.
And when you speak of how you have to think about all the possibilities, all the possible pitfalls that you might face, and that's when your team comes in. That's when you, as you said in the beginning, that you consider all of the opinions important and crucial. And when as a production manager interrelating with your department, we have a thing that we call the logistics meeting, where we in the prior meetings we talk about what we want to do, and then in the logistics meeting we talk about how all of the departments are going to work together to actually do it. And working closely with Lindsay and Brett and Matt, and discussing the flow of the departments, how you're going to cover the set that's striking Tuesday's work on Wednesday when you really want to be prepping this thing that shoots on Thursday, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody want to speak to that? Anybody want to talk about the challenges that we face along those lines? Oh, look at that.
Who put that up?
And of course,
Oh, sorry, I went mute. I just put this up as a visual aid, because just like this is a 2-week period, and every single one of these lines is something to do. Lindsay and Brett can speak to these, because this is the sort of structural lifeblood of how anything gets done in the art department.
This may sound just like such a basic question, but I'm just so curious what kind of communication platforms you all use to coordinate and keep in touch with so many moving parts so nothing gets missed.
Well, yeah,
interesting.
that's really exciting, actually, because what do you see now, you guys? Do you see Slack? So one of the things that we've found that's kind of the work that we're doing now that's really satisfying, and everyone, you guys can speak to this really specifically, but we find this forum of Slack to be super helpful.
It's actually been transformative, I think.
Transformative, because we have to communicate with so many people. Maddie, go. Because
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we discovered because of COVID, and it's a way, a group way of sort of combining texts and emails and visual things. And you can create all these channels for various, I have one for a set deck department and they have one for the art department, but we're all sort of have access to each other's channels, and each channel is a set, and you can keep track of everything on the set and communicate through that. It's been a game changer for us in the set
Yeah.
decorating department. How do you, Lindsay and Brett, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
we would
did-
say the same thing.
Yeah, I'd agree. All that information used to just be in giant multiple text chains and emails and all this kind of stuff that you'd have to try to backtrack and figure out where was this and what was that. And, because we're spread all over the place. Sometimes we're in Palmdale, sometimes we're in Oceanside, sometimes we're in San Pedro, we're all over the place, split up. So it's been great to have one hub for information coming in, posting pictures, communicating, talking about specific documents from graphics to set installations, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah, when I think about from a set deck department point of view, when I was first in the business, if you were a buyer or you were working in the set decorating department, you took a camera around to places and you shot pictures of things. And then you went to the 1 hour photo and you turned in your film, and an hour you went to lunch, and an hour later you got your film, and then you went back to the office and you showed the pictures to other people. And now as a set decorator, I can sit at my desk and my buyers are at the prop house, or they're, at a thrift store or at Wertz Brothers, and they can put pictures immediately onto Slack and, say, send me a message. Hey, is this what we're looking for? And I can go on my computer and, look up something on the internet and post a picture and say, no, I'm looking for something more like this. And it's so amazing, I think. And that was a great question, because I truly think this has been transformative for the way that my department works.
yeah, and ours as well, because kind of the executive functioning level of organized texting is impossible to recreate, and trying to sort of manage that amount of detailed communication and then going back to that channel of communication and making sure the person who needs to do something about it can be added. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Slack, but essentially you can highlight it with mentioning some specific person, and so they'll get a ping on their phone, and then they'll know to look at that channel, because as you can see, there are innumerable channels, and after an episode 20 of these will go away, and then another bunch of channels will come in, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, I honestly don't really know how we operated for so long without it. It was just a flurry of text messages and emails. And I remember us constantly being like, what was that piece of information? Was it in a text? Was it in an email? And it was like this archaeology of trying to figure out where the heck all the bodies were buried, just to, look up a graphic that got approved last week. So now it's all in one place. For every set, we make a channel, and all of the information for that channel or for that set is in there, from location photos to director's plans to graphics. And, we can talk to Set Deck through this. They have their whole own separate one. This one's just for the art department. Set
And
Deck
then
probably
even-
a similar structure.
Even within the body of it, you've got all the individual people you can just privately message if you don't want the group to have to clutter their mind with something specific, and it can be specific to just the person. It's a game changer in terms of communicating with a graphic designer. That's another department I forgot to talk about. Graphics are really important.
I'm so excited about this. You have no idea. Allie and I both are big Slack users, and we appreciate it because we work on so many different projects. And so it's interesting to me that you started using this during last year, during COVID. That's kind of amazing.
Well, in truth, actually, we started using it when we were in pre-production on Redbird Lane, because we found it or I think we I'm trying to remember whether I started using it right before I had to consider sending people to work remotely. And then we had to realize, oh, how are we going to communicate with a set designer remotely? That's a nightmare. And then, you know, you were able to do it before in an email forum, but this kind of organized executive functioning texting with all kinds of elaborate Dropbox links and photographic links and research that everyone can access. You know, we used to be dependent upon a server that everyone can access, but we couldn't always be in. I mean, Tom, you can speak to that. Like the whole server was also transformative in our lives, and then this topped it.
Yeah, I mean, also in the past, everyone was in the same building frequently, or would regroup in the same building to discuss things, which we didn't have all of a sudden, and that's why we had to move to a platform like Slack. But we do also keep all of our archived files on a networked hard drive that everyone in the office has access to, and that was another issue when something on the studio lot can only be accessed from the studio lot, so we couldn't do it that way, so we needed something that was remotely accessible.
Yeah, so because if a person,
it's really easy. Oh, sorry.
yeah, if we had a set designer working who by necessity had to be working, or a graphic designer who by necessity had to be working in their home, they couldn't go through the fire block of the studio information. So we had to create a way to get information accessible to everybody. I'm sorry, Brett.
That's okay. I was just going to say, it's really easy when you're in a bullpen with 10 people and you're like, you can walk out your door and say, hey, change that window to 3 feet instead of 2 feet, or do this or do that. And you can kind of communicate in that way. So when you don't have the physical presence of a person, it becomes a lot more difficult to communicate. So it's just nice that this has been a way that people can check it and you can have conversations directly with people, and all the information's there and everybody can see it and chime in, because, you know, part of working in the bullpen and information is listening to what's going on around you while you're doing 10 other things. So you kind of have an ear on what's happening. And when you don't have that, it becomes impossible. So Slack was a good find for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of my art, the way that we run our art department, I kind of make sure everybody knows that you better overhear everything I say. Like, don't feel like anything. So you please overhear everything I say. Make sure you overhear everything I say, because that's there are nuances to a conversation that sometimes, you know, in the retelling get left out. So Slack helps a lot with that, because if at 3 o'clock in the morning I'm like, oh shoot, I really did want it to be blue, I said I wanted it to be red, and I do that all the time, like, oh, and then I like at 3 o'clock in the morning I'll say I meant red or whatever it might be. And then, you know, at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever, when somebody needs to take action upon it, it's there, that information is there. It's really been amazing. It's actually, we're now an ad for Slack, but our other communication tool, which in my earlier career, people used to say, why are you wasting all that paper? Were these Tech Scout packets. And now Tech Scout packets have become essentially required. I can show you a Tech Scout packet from a show that's already aired somewhere. I bet I can. Okay, so like this is a Tech Scout. Hold on. Do you see a Tech Scout packet, or do I have to screen share?
Screen share.
Okay. So here's a Tech Scout packet, and this becomes kind of a beginner's Bible to what? Now you see it?
Yes.
Okay. This becomes kind of a beginner's Bible to what we're going to do in an episode. So after a great deal of location scouting and resolving what we're going to do, we as an art department, and particularly led by Tom and Emma and everybody contributes to the set designers and such, create a Tech Scout packet. These are all the locations that we are and sets that we're doing. So per episode, we'll have a Tech Scout packet that becomes a kind of communication tool for all of the departments, because we're responsible to communicate these locations and the things that we're going to be doing to all of the departments. But these site plans and then specific details with maybe camera angles that the director has told us that they want to actually see at the location become a talking stick for everyone. And it used to be that it was a talking stick and everyone would like toss it aside when we were on the physical tech scouts. But now, because much of in the first flush of how to solve the problem of not everybody being in a bus together, everything's gotten re-examined. And so the Tech Scout packet becomes the working tool to discuss for a director and the art department, the grips and the electricians, what we intend to do at these particular locations. Because there's a first wave of location scouting that happens with directors, and then we edit down the locations that we're picking. And then in the old days, pre-COVID days, we used to all go back as a group in a big gigantic bus and spend all day long driving from location to location every time for each episode. But we can't do that anymore. And so this, as a talking stick, becomes a way that we can communicate with all of the departments what we intend to do when we go to all these locations that now as a group we don't go to anymore as a group. I'm hoping that one day these things will happen like they used to happen in the old days, but for now these Tech Scout packets, which we've been making for years, become this essential talking stick for what we're going to do, what got discussed, what you don't have to think about. You don't have to think about being up here. You can park the trucks over here, whatever it might be. So that's another communication tool that we use, is the Tech Scout packet.
Nina, can you touch on the location department and how locations are chosen? What sort of philosophical and discussions of the dramatic lead to those kind of decisions, please?
Well, sort of starting from what happened, the way in episodic television, I'd say episodic television is an accelerated version of things that happen in any other format, feature, or whatever it might be. But in an episodic television situation, over the course of a 7-day period, on average, everybody gets a script, they read the script, and then they start first day of prep of that episode, the 7 days of prep of that episode, in a group conversation about what the intent of the script is, what the intent of the particular locations are, and maybe some very specific, in a forum where we're all together. We used to do it in a big room, and the department heads would be in that room, and then we would talk through what are our needs for the script. Usually in advance of that, the location manager and the producer and the producing director sometimes, or just me, end up in a many conversations about, okay, how are we going to solve the problem of shooting 20 locations in 7 days, for instance? Like how do we solve that? So there's what the story needs and what's scripted, and then there's the reality of how you can combine a shooting day to make it work for the show. So there's sort of two driving factors. Money is always a factor, and time. Our job is to kind of keep the vision high and make sure that certainly the most important things, like if there's this important, I'm thinking about the preppers compound and things like that. Like, oh, that might be some pictures that I could show. The needs of the story are going to take you to some other world. Today we were in San Pedro, and remember yesterday we were in San Pedro, and today we were out in Lancaster. So the location, there's certain things that are going to be necessary because of the script. And so the location manager will send their crew out in advance, hopefully, if there's enough information about the script, to go out and take pictures of some options, pick multiple pictures of options. And for instance, as basic as we need a liquor store. So it's not like, okay, well, yeah, but where does the liquor store want to be? So we need a liquor store. So the location scout, maybe with not enough information, will go out and take pictures of different locations that are liquor stores. And then they will share on another communicative website, nowhere near as good as Slack, classically called Image Event, where there'll be, for an episode, say 12 different channels, so to speak, and there'll be like 10 pictures, 10 different sets of pictures, folders of pictures of liquor stores. So then I'll look through I'll look through the 10 pictures of liquor stores and like, no, not like this, not like this, but these 3 could be very interesting. And then at that point, we might engage a director, producer, certainly, that would be engaged in looking at the pictures like this, like this, like this. Yeah, okay, like this. So then we'll find great pictures, and then we will focus on, hopefully we've scouted for them in the right parts of town. That's another part of the story. And then together we'll go in a bus and we'll go to look at the 3 different liquor stores. And the we of that all is the director for sure, the producer for sure, and me as a production designer, and the assistant director. That's the least number of people that would be going. And then hopefully, usually we've been adding more people, the assistant director, the second assistant director, and an art director, so that when we are wearing too many hats, somebody knows where the bodies are buried. So now we've looked at 3 of those. The director is now with us. The episodic director is now with us. And we've looked at those 3 liquor stores, and there's one that's the best. And so now we try to anchor a day that's related to that great liquor store. This is a really long way of explaining the story. But if you imagine, let's say there's 20 locations, we do that for every single location in the script. So, and again, time expands and contracts. The work expands and contracts to the time allowed, and expands and contracts to the money allowed. So, and in terms of locations, much of it is not just what the location is, but where the location is. And let's say there's only a quarter of a day of shooting work that we need to do there. Now that location might be trumped by the fact that it has to be combined with 3 other locations that need to accomplish other visual things, but be shot on the same day. So now instead of liking that one in San Pedro, we have to really like the one in Burbank instead. And sometimes we have, as an art department, have to improve the one that we need to shoot so that it works just as well as maybe our favorite one. But it's not going to do you any good if you can't get there or can't get it done in a shooting day, because there's so many factors that factor into what makes a decision for any particular location. And then that's exponential for all of the different locations in an episode.
Thank you. And then in discussing those factors, in some of those meetings that you were discussing, the first meeting that we have, we call a concept meeting, where all the department heads get together and we discuss the script for the first time, and we talk about our goals and what we're looking for. Later in the prep period, we have what's called a production meeting, which is the confirmation of what we've been able to achieve toward those ends, and just so that everybody's on the same page as we get ready to start shooting. Now, Matt, as you're sitting through, especially in the concept meeting, what sort of factors are you listening for to guide your work as far as what you're going to be, how you're going to dress a set in order to serve character and story?
Well, in a concept meeting, which is our sort of initial group take on a script, I'm just basically listening for anything the director might say about how, usually nowadays we have the writers doing them. And so I'm listening to, the writer's take on that, or anything the director might chime in with about how they see the scene happening, and looking for little clues about, things that I might add to the set that can underscore the intention of the script in that scene. Or also just very practical things, does the director want a sheet on the sofa to indicate that someone's been sleeping there? Or sometimes it's just very simple questions to ask about how they intend to sort of interpret some things that might be in the script. But these days with the writers doing it, it's kind of interesting, because you get the writer there sort of commenting on what they've written, which is kind of fun and interesting, because you get a little bit inside their head, and sometimes it helps you decide, gee, maybe I'll dress this set with a little bit of this and that to sort of underscore that aspect of it. I'm being sort of general here, but it's kind of like, I kind of work intuitively, so I'm just kind of trying to get a feel for things and using that as a guide to how I'm going to sort of make the set feel, because I think the feeling of it is what I'm after in the long run. When I'm putting all these things on the set, it's really about the feel of the scene and how can I best help magnify or color or express that with just what's going on with the stuff that's there.
Excellent. Now, we've talked about the way we work and the scale that we work on this fairly big budget television show. But as we kind of head towards the end of the session, I'd like to steer it towards the scale that perhaps some of the folks who will be watching this video to their scale of project and time frame and budget. Is there any advice that any of you folks might give to someone who's doesn't have $1 million budget, that has $100 or $1,000 or $10 to make a set? And then, if you don't mind, we'd also like to touch base with everybody about any discussion about how people got in the business, any tips on how to get in the business now, and certain qualities that help you flourish in the challenges of the film industry. Matt, do you want to start?
Well, I will say this, that like everybody else, all of my colleagues here, I started out on little low budgets things, and it's no different now than it was then. You have to be just as creative with say the money I have every episode is $25,000. I have to be just as creative with that as I was, when I was doing a non-union film where I had, $1,000 for, the whole movie or whatever. So it's your creativity. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's the challenges of how do you make this world come to life with the resources that you have. And if all you have is a bunch of cardboard and some crayons, then you create some wonderful magical cardboard set and you make something completely different from what anybody has ever seen before. So that's the best thing I can say, is that's why we're all in the business, to be creative every day and to get these challenges thrown at us and to say, yeah, I could do that. I can make that out of this, chewing gum wrapper and a rubber band and some gum. Sure. So that's my answer to that question.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Brett, Lindsay?
Something that helped me a lot as a student, making kind of student films and not having any budget at all. Like, instead of shopping at like the Warner Brothers prop house, you would shop in like thrift stores and secondhand stores and stuff like that. And there's also a lot of charities and companies that help out student films or small budget like indie films as well. You've got places like Eco Sets where you can go and tour. You have to like phone up beforehand, but you can go tour and like get pieces to actually build like your own sets for free and like get props from there. So there's tons of different resources out there.
And Emma, how did you get in the business? How did you get this job? What led up to that?
I was at USC studying film as a master's. So I made like every weekend I would be on a different short film, whether or not it was a student one or like outside. And I had a friend that I'd worked with before. She was in this job and she had to leave. And so she finally very kindly recommended me to Nina. And so that's how, and funny enough, I'd actually met Nina teaching something very similar to this at USC beforehand as well. So I got very lucky in that respect, but I've always got all of my jobs just through who I know. And it's from the people that I've been working with on these free short films.
Fantastic.
So help whoever you can, you never know.
Absolutely. And
yeah, I mean, just to add to that too, I would say that, even when you do get in and you're working on regular projects and you want to move into a different like step up. Like if you're production designing something that maybe you only have $10,000 for, you know, you could reach out to friends or sometimes prop houses or places that support that or see something in you. And you call in favors whenever you can, if that's going to help your project, and not to be afraid to ask people for that kind of help, because you never know. If someone's like, oh yeah, totally, you've got some extra this, you've got some extra that, go ahead, have this, or, you know, shop in the collection for the price of not having to pay for the collection at the one of those prop house. You know, like you never know what kind of stuff you're going to get from your colleagues and people around you, because, you know, everyone, it's the film community and people want to support you and be a part of what you're creating.
Yeah, I would say that I could probably trace all of my jobs back to people that I knew from my time at CalArts, because a lot of those people went off to go do other things. And my mentor there connected me up with a fellow alumni who kind of got me started. And my boyfriend did not go to film school in LA, but he did. He's an electrician. He works on a lot of big TV shows and things as well. And he had a sort of a different experience where he didn't actually go to school for it here. He was in Wisconsin going to school, but when he came to LA, he did a lot of AFI thesis films, and he met tons of people working on these AFI thesis films. And that was sort of like his LA college experience. And he got all of his jobs can be traced back to those people. So it's really those first smaller jobs that sort of begin your network of people that rehire you and recommend you. And so it is those smaller jobs that you build on in your career forever.
Tom, any words of advice or description of how you got in?
For me, I did a lot of short films after college, and then I was actually working as a substitute teacher, and a former classmate of mine from USC just called and said, hey, I know somebody who's looking for an art PA. Would you be able to start tomorrow? And I just dropped everything and did that. I worked with that designer for a few years. She was the one who helped me get into the union as a coordinator, and then it's just gone on since then. It really is all about who you've worked with and who you know, because people will recommend you to your next job, and everyone's always asking like, oh, who do you know, who have you worked with that is good, and that's the way it goes.
And then Tom and Emma, both of you had mentioned at the beginning of this how as you switch from show to show, your job changes and you need to adapt to that new show. How do you sense how the job changes? How do you sense, you know, what's being expected of you, et cetera, and how do you fill those goals?
Well, it really kind of boils down to who the designer is and how the show is structured. I work on some shows where I'm coordinating for the art department and set deck, and so then I work a lot more closely with the decorator. And this show has a set deck coordinator, so I don't work as closely with set deck on this show. Every show handles, for example, the Tech Scout packets differently. Sometimes it's something that's given out after the Tech Scout, sometimes it's before, sometimes it's, they take different forms. It sort of depends on how the particular designer you're working with likes to work. So you kind of get a feel for that in the interview process, but then also as soon as you start working, you see how everyone wants to do things, and that's what you adapt to.
Got it. Emma, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, exactly what Tom said. Like, you just adapt to what your designer and everyone around you needs. And especially as a PA, like, you're constantly not only asking, like, can I help you, but you're listening out to see where you can then help in between the gaps. So a lot of it is just kind of keeping your ear to the ground and trying to be, like Nina said, she always likes all of us listening and all of us knowing.
And I think, you know, one common thread through all of your approaches to the work is like you're always looking for what needs to be done. You've got to catch that ball that's it's about to fall if someone else doesn't catch it. And so being that person, as Tom was saying, you know, people say, who's good? Who can you recommend? And people remember the person who caught that ball that you might have missed, and the person who's listening, and the person who says, hey, didn't Nina say that we wanted that green, not blue, or something like that? And that, all of that, paying attention and giving your energy to the project and listening and reporting back and following through is really the qualities that I feel like, qualities that I look for in people that I'm hiring, and qualities that I strive for as you know, I've continue in my career to this day.
Yeah, I would say, to add to that, that one of the things that's intimidating, if you think that you don't know something, like that's intimidating. I don't know how to do this. But the thing is that, in fact, actually, we all don't know how to do this, because, like, okay, I'm going to make a crematorium. I don't know anything about a crematorium, so I'm going to learn about a crematorium, and we're going to make a crematorium, and then we're going to learn everything about it. And Emma's going to do visual research, and Tom's going to find materials, and then you know, Lindsay and Brett will oversee the kind of creation of a ground plan, and then we'll find out what it might be. But like and then Matt will decorate it too fairly well, and we'll all be focused on something new. But in fact, actually, none of us have done a crematorium before. So the idea that you're intimidated as a beginner by not knowing how to do something, you can let that go, because really, in fact, no one wants to hire you for what you know about crematoriums or whatever it might be. What they want to hire you for is your willingness to learn about it, and your willingness to recognize that I can be helpful. Like, I can be helpful doing this, or I can find out about that. And I think that's really important. I would wish I knew that more when I started, because you don't have to pretend like you know anything. You can just express how willing you are to find out about it.
And it's also okay to ask too. Like, I find that, you know, a lot of people are, especially for people who are entering the business, that are very eager to pass on what you know, experiences we have, and how we you know, pass on any sort of knowledge that we can, and it makes us feel good, even as it helps folks learn the next step. Don, anything else?
It's kind of like you're tapping into a frequency together, you know, you're all trying to figure out this problem and problem solve it, you know, make sure it works to shoot, make sure the timing's right, looking at materials, what works, what doesn't work, what's not the norm, what is the norm, you know, we're all kind of collectively feeling this frequency to get it all figured out.
And then I do want to circle back to that point that you made, Robert, about, like, if somebody has no money, like, what do? You go back to the script and you try to get to the feeling that wants to be experienced. And you can create a feeling in $1 million world, or you can create a feeling in, like Matt is saying, like in a cardboard room. You can, it's the intent. Like, what is the intent? What should be the feeling of the tone of the experience? And then come up with the imaginative solution, how to do it with the materials you have. But you have to sort of anchor it on what the script wants to feel like, the tone.
Mm-hmm.
This is like phenomenal, honestly. I'm super grateful to all of you. It's really so much amazing information and such beautiful work that you've done. You know, what a lot of the people that we work with are young writers, young, you know, emerging producers, directors. And what I'm hearing from you, from all of you, is just the amount of kind of creativity that you bring. And so what advice would you give to these sort of emerging writer or emerging director in terms of how to share their vision of what they want their piece to look like, whether that's, you know, a lot of the ones we're working with right now are doing series, but they're also doing short films and things. Like, what would you tell them to make sure that the art direction is actually happening?
I think lookbooks are really important. Lookbooks, and from a director's or a writer's perspective, it's not out of the question for, if you're not aligned with a production designer already, it's important for you to kind of create a lookbook that then can be a communication, like a talking stick with research and pictures, and obviously the production designer can then expand it to be more specific. And sometimes a director or a writer doesn't actually have a vision, so then it falls upon the production designer to sort of hopefully correctly interpret what that vision is. But a lookbook is a great place to start the communication experience of creating a film together, because sometimes it's always the sum is greater than the parts in those moments. So if you have a writer and a production designer or a producer or a director when a production designer together and they're sharing visual imagery, and it's like kinetic, it's like all of a sudden, oh yeah, exactly that, and then this cinematographer, and then these photographs, and then the color of this thing. It wants to be, you be amazed at what everything can be a visual reference, and everything can be a communication tool to get you guys in sync. But do you guys know what I mean by a lookbook? Research.
Yeah, we definitely teach. That's one of the things we teach all of our participants is creating lookbooks, creating style guides, using visual material to help them explain it. But I can hear that, and also the flexibility that you want your emerging director or writer to be open to that collaborative process, which is phenomenal. It's great hearing you talk about that.
Yeah, that I was actually watching a director who I didn't really understand when I first worked with them. And then later I worked with them again, and having not worked with them for a few years, and I worked with them again, and I watched the way that they stood in the room, and that they came with their homework, but then they stood in the room and they let go of that for a second, the baggage of their presumptions, and they looked at what was there. And they saw, or like an example, like they saw this mirror up on the wall, or a concave mirror, or suddenly he thought, oh, okay, I'm going to tell the story that way. But if that person had come into the moment without being willing to be open to whatever the world might offer them at that moment, whether it's, a bird flying by or a bag flying in the air, or whatever it might be, like if you're so closed because you're so preconceived, then you don't let the magic of opportunity come to you. So I think that's important too, that you can all come with your preconceived ideas and everyone, but you can't get fixated. You sometimes need to let that go, because it can open up to something really great.
That sounds like a life lesson to me. I have to, and that's a quote. I'm going to use that quote from now on. Let go of the baggage of your perceptions, that just seems like such a life lesson, not just in this, but in many aspects of life.
I hope one day I can achieve it.
And I think, to your question, Dawn, about advice to budding filmmakers, as film is a collaborative process, as they try to engage their team in the furtherance of their vision, it's so important to be able to communicate and to be able to listen to the responses that you get as you're communicating. And if you're not necessarily feeling like the folks that you're communicating to are understanding your vision, then maybe adjusting your communication to fit that. And as Nina has assembled this team, and how Brett was talking about being on that same frequency, much of the work and assembling of the team is about being able to create that sort of hive mind. And it's so important in filmmaking to be able to express to people what you're trying to get across and what you're feeling and what where the story should be going.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I don't know if there's any other questions, or Ali, if you have any questions too.
I just love that. I love that note that you all were just ending on right there, because that's one of the first things that we always emphasize to our students from a really young age, even our middle school students, is that filmmaking is not an independent sport. It's not a solo sport. And we teach them about the collaborative efforts it takes to get a huge project across the finish line, and how, you know, set decorating or providing backup is just as important as writing the script. And so we always make sure that they rotate roles and get to try everything. And that from a young age for our students, they've really gotten to see, wow, every single role is so important. And so that's something that we try to instill in them very, very young age. So by the time they're in high school and making films, they know they need their team and they know they need people that understand their vision. So it's just really great to keep hearing that echoed back to them, because, you know, sometimes I think we can convince ourselves that we can just create these projects alone in a silo, and it's just not going to be possible with the magnitude of some of them. So yeah, I just appreciate that that's always echoed back, is that it takes a community and it takes everybody having that really strong communication to do it.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I think we're coming to the last couple of minutes here. I just, I don't know, I just am super grateful to all of you. That was really so much great information, and we'll be sharing this with lots of people. So within our community, it's a small student community, but we really appreciate your just your generosity of time and information. And now I'm going to go back and watch those shows again and go and think through all of that. I often do that. I really am one of those people who pays attention to continuity.
It's so cool.
It's a game we play, the continuity game.
Yes, Nina and the team, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate everyone pitching in and helping out. Thank you so much.
It's an honor to be asked to do this. It's fantastic. There's nothing more exciting than people that are new that are coming into the industry. So good luck, everybody. Have a great time. It's a great life.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, stop.